Anybody, anywhere,
It's time to take command.
The Cardiac Commanders are the Clutch Commanders!
With former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen.
This pass caught by Paulsen, the tight end.
And from 106.7 The Fan, Grant Paulsen.
Welcome in to Take Command with Logan Paulsen, who played a decade in the NFL. I'm Grant Paulsen. Watch us on the 106.7 The Fan, Team 980 YouTube channels. Of course, the pod drops 3 times a week right after the game, then a breakdown of the game a couple of days later, and then later in the week, this pod, a look ahead to the upcoming game, in this case, Sunday Night Football with the Seattle Seahawks. Logan, the Commanders are 3-5. I don't tend to do the must-win thing until mathematically it's a must-win, but boy, does it feel like Washington needs this game. They have only won 1 game in the conference. You know, their chances are probably better in the division right now than in the wild card, just based on resume, and they're trying to halt the 3-game skid against a really good Seattle team. It won't be easy, but you've got the Lions looming, looking for payback after the playoffs last year. It feels like if you're going to salvage your season, you got to get this game.
That's what it feels like. And they are coming off a little bit of a travel West Coast to East Coast, which is, historically very tough, but they got the bye too. So they've had a ton of time to prep and kind of see the things that have given the Commanders issues. But yeah, man, it does feel like we're getting to that hour of the season where we got to kind of start making some moves here in terms of winning some ball games. And again, there's a lot of adversity associated with the team at the moment, but again, nobody really cares. We got to find ways to get dubs. And, I think there's some things like we talked about in the review pod that defensively give you some optimism, the energy, the physicality, the speed, the turnovers. But again, there's still a lot to clean up. And then offensively, past couple of weeks has been a little bit sluggish. So, there's some things that need to be improved upon, and hopefully they get that done because they need to find a way to win this football game.
It's interesting. I referenced this 3-game stretch that are all brutal matchups as the gauntlet. And I kind of have felt throughout like maybe on the road at Arrowhead, oddly enough, was the game that was, the most winnable. Now, Seattle on paper as a team, I think, is the matchup where you'd point to this and you go, you could get this team. But I don't think people know how good Seattle is. It's not to say you can't win it. It's going to be a tough game, though. This is the number 3 defense in the NFL in yards per play. They're the number 3 offense in the NFL in yards per play. It's very, very rare that you see a team that's in the top 3 on both sides of the ball. I think they're very well coached. They're getting better and better. They're a young team. But also, you mentioned it. It's the extra week to prepare off of a bye week that makes this so daunting, while simultaneously and contrarily, Washington played on Monday night and got all banged up, and Terry McLaurin got hurt and has already been ruled out and is not playing in this game. And you're licking your wounds with guys like Javon Kinlaw and Johnny Newton and Laramie Tunsil, who all missed some time in that Monday night game with different dings and injuries. And now you got 6 days to prepare, and you're flying back overnight Monday into Tuesday. So just from a scheduling standpoint, before we get into the X's and the O's, this is about as tough as it gets in the league.
It is tough, man. And I go back to this old adage, like, it is tough. It is challenging. There's a lot of adversity here, but nobody cares, right? Like, it's one of those things that's incredibly, I think it's can be incredibly frustrating, I think, for players, is that there is a lot of adversity. There's a lot of injuries. There's a lot of, augments to the schedule. But ultimately, you got to find a way, man. You got to find a way to get, 53 guys pulling in the same direction, find a couple, balls to fall your way in terms of interception, big plays down the field, special teams, because you got to find a way to win the football game. So I do agree. This is not ideal from a scheduling standpoint. It's not ideal because of the injuries, the health recovery, like the preparation, all of those things, especially because Seattle's coming off a bye. And I'll tell you this, Grant, after watching the film, man, like, they are a very well-coached, well-prepared football team. So I think they're probably going to use that extra time effectively. They're going to come out looking good, I would assume. And it's just about how you handle this stuff. And so we'll see. We'll see what the Washington Commanders can put forward. Again, I think there are some reasons for optimism. But again, it's going to be a big lift. And honestly, like, when this whole 3-game stretch started, this game was one that I had circled as being very, very tough. I think Detroit's going to be the toughest one because of the history with Detroit in the playoff game last year and how Dan Campbell operates. This was the second most difficult one because I think this team is excellent. And I think the time they have to prepare is a huge advantage for them. So there's a lot of things stacked against them. But like I said, I keep saying they got to find a way to win this football game.
Yeah, no, I like the idea, and maybe Dan Quinn will use it this week. Nobody cares, to go to the UFL for a second. You and I got to call Defenders games years ago together, and they had this axiom that I love this year. They had an interim head coach come in and take over, and they had this thing they would do after each game in the locker room where he would list all the things that were like going against them, basically, where he's like, our quarterback's hurt, and they'd go, yeah. And they would like yell like yes or something. And then at the end, like they would basically the whole bit was like, good. I think that's even what they yelled, like good. And they're like, short week, good. They got more rest, good. And that's kind of the mindset you have to have in a sense is, because there's someone sitting at home listening to this right now going, okay, I get it, guys. Like there's been adversity. Last year, someone could say it was a pretty charmed life. Yep. Like a lot of the times Washington had the benefit of some of the luck and the good fortune and some of the things that was going on scheduling wise or playing a backup quarterback. And so it kind of evens out. Like some years you get the magical carpet ride and we all get the high five and kiss on the cheek. And we got to live that last year. And you're paying the piper a little bit this year, but they got to find a way here. I will say about Seattle, just watching them, probably not to the same extent that you did, but going back the last couple of days now, I've always liked Mike McDonald. I think that guy's a star. He is a young X's and O's schemer, high energy. Washington interviewed him when they hired Dan Quinn, I believe. He was a part of that process, if you remember. And it just seems to me like on both sides of the ball, because I've always been a big fan of Clint Kubiak as well. I know part of that, Shanahan tree that you're familiar with. I just think they do a really good job in all phases.
Yeah, man. Like we're going to talk in depth about them because I think there's a lot of really fun things that they do. Like I said, they're well schemed, they're well coached, they're well designed on both sides of the football. I think that shows up in the metrics that you just referenced. So again, this is not your old Seattle Seahawks. This is not the Seattle Seahawks from last year or 2 years ago. Mike McDonald has firmly entrenched himself in terms of defensive scheme. Obviously, Aiden Drude is the defensive coordinator. I actually worked with him. He was an assistant defensive coach when I was in Atlanta. Dan Quinn knows him very well. Very bright dude. And he's kind of like how like there's these offensive-minded coaches that have the offensive coordinator that like preps the game plan. He's been doing that for them. And I think it's just like defensively, they just do so much stuff, man. They do so much stuff. Their third down pressure packages are awesome. The coverage variety they play is pretty diverse. They do a great job playing light boxes in the run game. And they have a defensive line and a defensive interior that makes them right. And so they've got all these kind of flex pieces, nickel, safety type players that can fit and play different roles within the defense. So it's a tough group, man. And they know where they're weak, they know where they're strong, and they know how to get you in third down, and they know how to win those opportunities. Really is the thing that I come away and watching this. And it's one of the things that made Mike McDonald so good when he was in Baltimore. So there's a lot of things here that they do really well. They're going to pose big challenges in terms of planning and game planning for Cliff Kingsbury.
Yeah, so let's start with the Seattle defense then and Washington's offense being on the field against this group, Logan. I mean, there's talent all over the place. Up front, Leonard Williams, who's a game wrecker when he wants to be the former Giant. Washington fans know him well. A really good player. Byron Murphy's a excellent nose tackle, big fella, middle of the formation, first-round pick. In fact, I saw a stat this week on Byron Murphy that he's posted a top 5 run stop rate, about 15% among defensive tackles this season, over 4 percentage points higher than his 2024 rate. He's playing out of his mind up front. On the edge, they've got DeMarcus Lawrence, who thought about signing with Washington, said he didn't want to come here because he thought they were too close to a Super Bowl. So he went to Seattle, which he viewed a little bit more of a project rather than linking back up with Dan Quinn. And then Jaron Reed, the former Packer, who was originally a consideration for the Commanders in the draft in the first round years ago, way back when he went to Minnesota. But, I mean, how about that front? Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Jaron Reed, DeMarcus Lawrence. It gives you a little indicator when you see those 4 guys across the front of the formation why they're far and away number 1 in the NFL, minus 113 rushing yards over expected to this point.
Yeah, and I mean, those are the four guys that kind of, are the tip of the spear for them defensively. But Mike Morris, the guy from Michigan a couple years ago, doing a great job playing kind of this, 3-4 end, 3-4 down defensive end, interior player in a 3-4 base. They also have Boye Mafe, who's been very good rushing the passer. They have Derek Hall, been very good rushing the passer. They have Anichia Nwozia, who has also been very good rushing the passer. They've got I was talking to Fred about this. We've been doing this Ticket to the Draft show in the offseason, Fred and my buddy Jason. And one of the things is every year there's this kind of pass rush specialist, this pass rush upside player. And Boye Mafe, Derek Hall, Nwuzu, have been those guys the last couple of years, and they're all on the same team, and they're all playing kind of with this pass rush upside. So you get DeMarcus Lawrence, who looks like he's healthy and returned to form. Couple that with Byron Murphy, who, again, like you mentioned the run, you feel that when you watch film. A guy that can take a double team, sink a double team, split a double team in the run game on first down, but also can rush the passer. Leonard Williams is playing awesome football right now. He's rushing the passer well. In their 4-down front and their nickel front, he's playing defensive end. He's also playing 3 technique. And in their 3-4 base, he's playing the 4-eye. He's playing like a stand-up guy. They're using him all over the formation. Jaron Reed has been a very consistent pro for a long time, but is a player that is a very good run stopper and an explosive big man. He's like 300 and what looks to be like 25 pounds to me. So they have a lot of pieces here in the front defensively on the defensive line that need to be accounted for. And then you couple that, I think, with the schematic element, which is the thing that really is the piece de resistance, the cherry on top of the defense. When they get in these third down situations, they do a great job using these kind of hybrid depth pass rushers to challenge your protection rules and create free runners to the quarterback. So, one of the major stories of this game is, can you run the football on this front? And then when you're in third down, can you pass protect versus this front? Because again, I was watching the Jacksonville game as an example, and they showed Jacksonville the most disrespect in terms of how they played them on first, second down. They basically played too high. They played light boxes, crazy light boxes, and we're like, we don't think you can run the football. And if I'm the offensive line coach for Jacksonville, I'm like, this is ridiculous. We should rush for 400 yards. And you got Leonard Williams splitting double teams. You got Reed splitting double teams. You got Byron Murphy with tackles for losses. They get these linebackers running free to the football. So can you block them on first, second down? That's a big thing here, because I think they're basically gonna dare you to run the football. And nobody throughout the season to this point has been able to do that. And then couple that with their pressure stuff on third down, it's going to be an interesting game for sure.
So I want to back up Logan's point with numbers when he says nobody's been able to do that, running the ball on them. I mean, again, this is the number 3 defensive team in the NFL in yards per play. They're number 1 against the run, and decidedly so, by the way. They're averaging 75 yards per game, and they are averaging 3.2 yards per carry as a team. That's crazy work. I mean, the bad teams in the league average 5.5 yards per carry given up. We're talking about 3.2 per pop so far on the season. As a passing defense, they're top 6. It's not like they've been bad. They pick you off at a high rate, 8th in the NFL. They get to the quarterback at a high rate, 11 in the NFL. But what they do best is stop the run. So if your key is finding ways on early downs to run the football, you're going to go where no team's gone before if you're able to pull that off. Just to double down on something else you said too, with their 4-man front, which is so good, they don't really blitz much. I mean, those guys get to the quarterback on their own. They have throughout the year. The Seahawks defense has utilized a 4-man rush 79% of dropbacks this season. That's number 3 in the NFL in terms of highest rates. When they do rush the passer with only 4, which again is about 8/10 of the time, they generate top 5 pressure in the league, 36%. They only blitz 19% of the time, which is 3rd lowest in the NFL. When they do, by the way, they get pressure about 52% of the time. So it's generally, to your point with those linebackers, very, very effective. But they haven't had to. They haven't had to help in the run game either. I mean, their defensive front is one of the stories of this NFL season. And yeah, Washington is absolutely going to have its hands full. So that having been said, let's get to the secondary, because I think that's why they're allowed to not blitz so often. Devin Weatherspoon's a 1st-round pick. Reek Woolen, who's been targeted at one of the 5 lowest rates in the NFL this season. On the other corner is very, very good. Julian Love and Kobe Bryant, their safeties. Love, a former Giant. Commanders fans should know. Both playing at a high level. And then their other corners, Josh Jobe, I believe, plays a bunch for them. They drafted Nick Amon-Wari, who's a rookie, in the 2nd round as well. There's a lot of high draft picks. There's a lot of speed and guys who can run in this secondary. It seems to me, you tell me if this is not quite the right way to look at it, like they feel good enough on the outside that they don't have to blitz. And basically, they play a lot of, like I saw cloud coverage as the phrase used, that they basically play at the highest rate in the league. But man, Mike McDonald's got all kinds of options. They got so many good players on the back end.
Yeah, and I really think it's probably the other way around. Like they can rush so well, they do feel comfortable playing more coverage. Because like there's opportunities, like in Jacksonville's a great example. Like they were running a fire zone, so they're bringing basically a 5-man rush. They're dropping 2 guys out, kind of in this 7 across the front formation. They're getting to kind of like what I would call a 3 deep, so like a cover 3 in the back end with 3 underneath hook players, and the comeback to Brian Thomas Jr. is wide open. And unfortunately, Trevor Lawrence gets a ton of pressure really quick, has to evade, and then kind of hits an errant throw. And so I think like when you look at why they're good in coverage, it's because the front's really good. And because like we just talked about how disruptive, Leonard Williams is, Jaron Reed, Byron Murphy, those guys in particular are really outstanding on 1st and 2nd down. And then you couple that with literally like they have like a stable of just like these maybe undersized, but like traitsy type pass rushers. Like I think about I just was remembering my draft report on Derek Hall. He has like 34.5-inch arms. He had the fastest 10 at the combine his year. He's like 255 pounds and 6'3". Like he's built to rush the passer. You couple that with Boye Mafe, who I think he led Minnesota in sacks the year he came out, something like that, something crazy like 9 or 12 sacks. So they have all these guys that have really traitsy pass rush ability, and now they're being used in those roles. And it's just they just have a lot of pitches to throw, and they've gotten a good, everyone talks about development of draft picks here in Washington. They have kind of hit the lottery because everyone thought Derek Hall was a little bit of a bust. Boye Mafe was underperforming. And all of a sudden this year under Mike McDonald, they've really kind of found their feet and are being very productive players when it comes to rushing the passer. So I think it's just they've got a lot. I didn't even talk about DeMarcus Lawrence, man. He's been awesome on 1st and 2nd down. So, and again, like even Mike Morris, who is a later round draft pick from Michigan a couple years ago, is excellent for them on 1st and 2nd down. They've just got, kind of the thing we were talking about with the Commanders defensive line. They just had a bunch of different pitches to throw, and they've all seemed to kind of have developed at the right time. I'm going to give credit to Mike McDonald and the defensive staff there. The coaching is going to be critical, but I do think that group really covers up a lot of holes in the back end because of the timing, right? It's like good defense. It's something we talked about in the review show with the Kansas City game, right? Like I actually thought there were at points in the Kansas City game where the Washington coverage was excellent, right? But the pass rush doesn't get home. And then all of a sudden some of the issues are exploited because you can't get pressure on Patrick Mahomes. The Seattle defense up to this point has not had that problem. They can rush 4, like you said, they rush 4 very effectively. They create enough pressure that the coverage contour never gets stressed, is never under a lot of tension, and it lets them play good football. So I think that's really what I would say. While they do have good coverage players in the back end, I want to double click on the nickel and like safety positions here because I think that's a big part of the defense. But the secondary players haven't been stressed the same way because the front's playing absolutely outstanding.
So I think I agree with that, and the rush is the whole story. The reason I thought maybe that the back end's been a strength as well is if you look at their numbers when they don't get pressure, they don't give anything up. So it's odd to me. I mean, and both can be true, right? It's just like, okay, then how do you actually move the ball on this defense, right? But the Seahawks defense has allowed opposing passers 6.4 yards per attempt when they don't generate pressure, which is top 4 in the NFL. And then if you look at non-pressure dropbacks and explosives, they're number 4 in the NFL with just a 13% rate of plays that go for 15 or more. So like, yeah, they definitely benefit from that pressure, but I wonder why it is when they don't get pressure that they're not giving anything up either.
Also, an important note here is they do a lot of simulated pressures. And I do think that like when you watch, I'm trying to remember which game it was. I've watched a lot of football here, but it doesn't matter. But basically like they're in some type of pressure look. They end up dropping guys out and again, that's where like these hybrid defensive end players come to the forefront, is they get into different coverage structures and are able to create overloads with the pressure. So I think like even though they're rushing 4, like they're able to kind of disguise the rush. It's not like, hey, here's 4 guys along the line of scrimmage, let's go rush. It's like it lets them hide some underneath coverage back end stuff. And again, it's really well designed. Mike McDonald and the defensive staff there are doing a good job.
For people that don't know, by the way, McDonald cut his teeth. So he was at Michigan at one point in time with Harbaugh, was viewed as this like savant in college. Then he made the leap to the NFL in Baltimore, and the Ravens had the best defense in the league, and he was this hotshot coordinator. And in fact, what really got him popular was he was one of the first guys to seemingly put together a plan that had great success against the Shanahan stuff.
Right.
You know, whether it was Kyle in San Francisco, who they shoved it on, Mike McDaniel when the Dolphins were hanging 70 on people and on a roll. You know, they had this game where they destroyed Miami. And that really, you know, all of a sudden, during that interview process, I remember being told by somebody with another team, somebody brought him in just to pick his brain on this is the offense that's taking the league over right now. Like all these guys are getting jobs. What are you doing against this offense? And so anyway, he gets a bunch of interviews, including here in Washington, and then he ends up, you know, as the Commanders were trying to figure things out with what they were going to do, you know, going out to Seattle with the Seahawks. So it's not that surprising that he's become this hotshot young coach. I think Jesse Minter with the Chargers could be the next guy of this vein where he goes somewhere and they build this thing in this image. I wanted to double click because you said before we moved on, you wanted to hit on nickel and safeties. What about those positions?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on him a little bit, but you got like Nick Amenwari there, who's like this big, 225-pound, 6'3" guy who can just run, and he's like your big nickel box player. You got Devin Witherspoon, who's one of the best nickel players in the league, and so like you've got these 2 pitches you can throw in different situations. You got packages where they're both on the field, and to get that athleticism from that spot while also getting guys that are physical, downhill, aggressive tacklers, I think is something that is just so hard to find. You know what I mean? It's so hard to find people that can play that position at a high level. Then you couple that with Kobe Bryant and Ty Okuda and Julian Love in the back end. And those guys, like, I mean, Kobe Bryant, I didn't even know who he was. He just jumps off the tape when you watch it. Like he's they like to be in like these 2 high structures, and then he's fitting runs from depth, and his intuition getting downhill is just outstanding. And again, like he's been part of a little bit of run. Like they don't do a ton of it, but like a little bit of line movement pre-snap, and he's kind of the extra run fit defender and just done a great job. So those 3 guys, like, again, the defensive line, specifically the defensive interior, are the players that jump out probably the most. But in terms of the thing that I think gives the defense its character, its football character, it's those flex positions. So the nickel position, the free safety is the one I just mentioned with Kobe Bryant. And then those kind of interchangeable defensive end linebacker pieces are the other one that really sticks out. Because again, like I was watching the Houston game. This is a really good example. It looks like they're bringing all out pressure. They end up dropping 3 guys out while still getting the 4-man overload to the back. And it looks like you're going to have a nice clean slant read. But the linebackers, who can rush the passer, are dropping under the slant. They tip the football. It's 3rd and 8, and they got a punt. Like it's just they have a lot of flexible pieces in the defense that can play in a base, set edges, do the things you need, but also move around, tackle in space, and do some of the things that are kind of that present a lot of challenges for that modern NFL offenses, present challenges in terms of finding space for skill players. They got guys that can operate in that same kind of universe.
Logan Paulsen, Grant Paulsen, take command. You said running the football against this group's going to be pivotal. Stay out of some 3rd and longs. Well, look, through 5 weeks, Ja'Cory Cross-Garrett was one of the stories of the league. He had a success rate of over 60%, which is basically measured by how close to the sticks you're getting on any given down. So that was through 25 carries. He was the best in the league at it. Plus 93 rushing yards over expected, was top 5. Since then, over the last 3 weeks, and this is not a JCM thing as much as it's indicative of what they've struggled to do running the ball, but the success rate is almost cut in half to 33%. He's minus 17 RYOE during that time. What are you seeing? Because I get that they've had injuries, but not necessarily mostly to the offensive line or to the tight ends. Why can't they run the ball like they were early in the year?
So I just want to give a little bit of context on this stat and rushing the ball in general, not just for this team. So one of the things that I think is important to note is like you're going to see at points in the season low rushing efficiency, like Derrick Henry is a great example. Like, so he'll have games where he rushes for 3.2, 2.9 yards a carry. And you're like, what happened to Derrick Henry? And all of a sudden he rips off a 40 or 50-yard explosive touchdown run, and that average just kicks right back up immediately. So part of the reason you're running the football is to find explosive run opportunities. And you think about the first 5 games of the year and what characterized them, right? You get the Giants game where he was good, but he had an explosive run, right? And you kind of go
42, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Explosive run. Then you go to the Chargers game where that was a little bit different because there was explosive chunks throughout. But if you take away those data points, you take away the explosive run versus the Giants, and you take out the kind of outlier game of the Chargers, like, this is how he's run. And this is not an indictment of how he's running, because I think he's actually running really, really well. And I like to look at like missed tackles forced for running backs, and he's always very good in that statistic. So he's doing his thing. I don't think you feel that production because he's lacking the explosive play opportunity, right? And there's a million reasons why that is. A little bit of it's serendipity, a little bit it's the level of opponent you're playing. But I think that's something that I just wanted to call attention to. Like that number.
No, it's good analysis, and
yeah.
Probably my own fault for even mentioning him specifically, because my question is not really about him. I don't think anything's different with him. I think anecdotally and statistically, when you watch them early, to take the explosives out of it, the Chargers, they're still gashing them. Early in the year, the Raiders, they did whatever they wanted. Like there just hasn't been room. They're getting hit. This stat I don't have, but I could look up. How many times like JCM has been hit at the line or in the backfield is completely changed. And I just wonder what's gone kind of sideways here.
Yeah, I think I'm glad you kind of double clicked on it, because I wanted to make sure we kind of had that context there real quick. And now we can get into like this blocking surface element of it. So a couple things. One, I do think there is a little bit of and most teams have some version of this, like, hey, we're in 13 personnel, our run rate goes up slightly. We're in 12 personnel, our run rate goes up slightly. Here, like when John Bates and Ben Sinner are in the game, the run rate's up. I want to say it's around 70%, right? So if you're a defense, you can kind of say, hey, like, we're going to key in on this, right? And I think Cliff has done a good job, or he did a good job in the Cincinnati game of saying, let's see if we can subvert that. Let's see if we can get that that discrepancy and run pass back towards 50-50. They run a couple play actions out of that stuff. Bates has the catch over the middle of the field. Sinner has the check down, right? You're trying to manage defensive expectations a little bit here, right? So I think that's one element. There's
do they need to do a little more of that in your mind, just to keep them honest?
I probably would think so. It's just it's some of it is game flow specific, right? So I think back to the Dallas game where it's like, hey, there's a lot of 3 and outs. Like, that does a number of terrible things for your offense, but one of them that I think is really important is you never get out of setup plays. You're never into like the play action off of this run or the cool trick play off of this formation, right? You're always in setup plays. And I think when you look at times where Cliff has been really in his bag, it's like after they get that first down, like even in the Kansas City game, he gets that first down and the offense is just popping, right? It's screens, it's zone reads, it's RPOs. Here's a little play action dink, and the thing just comes to life. And so like that's kind of my marker for most offenses is, can you get that first down and then get into your bag, get into the plays that you really want to get into? Because think about it, like just hypothetically, like I run the ball on first down, it's 2nd and 10. And now I'm off my first 15 already, right? I got to get into my 2nd and 10 calls, right? Then we get to 3rd and 8. It just gets you out of schedule, gets you out of the plays that you want to get into in terms of setup, in terms of execution, in terms of formation. So I think that's one element, right? Is just kind of being a little bit more consistent would allow you to break some of these formation and personnel tells we were just talking about. The other element that I think is important to note with the run game, specifically when you look at like the Bears and the Giants game, the Bears is a numbers issue, but it's also a front movement issue, right? That's the two things that the Cowboys and the Bears did really, really well, is they started stunting the front a lot, bringing first down pressures and just a ton of movement. And so people say, well, you need to expect that, right? With the Cowboys and the Giants both, they hadn't shown any of that prior to those games. So in the week, you're probably working static fronts, you're probably working traditional targets. It takes a special type of rep and practice structure to make sure you can accommodate some of that stuff. So I think that's another element too. The Giants, the Bears is a schematic thing that they did. They did something different. It was good. It was a pitch that's tough to hit, even when you're preparing for it. And it looked to me like on film, they hadn't really prepared for those differentiations in their departures from what they had done prior that year, right? Then you get to the Chiefs, and people say, why couldn't they run the ball against the Chiefs? And I think that's just, they're really good. Like, they're a really well-coached, sound defense. They get downhill. Those 3 linebackers, like we talked about, are really, really good. And I know fans hear that and they say, oh, Logan, like, you got to run the football against good defenses. That's true, but good defenses make it hard to do a bunch of different stuff. You look at the coverages, the play passes in that game, there's not a lot of air. There's not a lot of air in the run game. And again, I think when it ultimately comes down to it, it's guys winning one-on-ones in the run game too. I don't know if there was enough of that. So I think over the last 3 weeks, right, 2 of them are schematic. One of them is a personnel thing. This one, again, is going to come down to personnel and execution and just targeting runs correctly, because you're not going to see as much movement, I don't think, as you saw against the Bears and the Cowboys. But it's going to be more of a personnel thing like it was against the Chiefs. And so can we really sink in our double teams, really work those techniques, take the air out, drive vertically off the football with good eye discipline where it's got to go? That becomes the big question to me. I think at points this year they've done it. But again, this is going to be a tough challenge like we talked about with the personnel that they're presenting.
I want to hit on some of the players on offense and just kind of get some status reports from you. We'll do that next on Take Command. Welcome back, Take Command. Logan Paulsen, Grant Paulsen with you, getting ready for the Commanders and the Seahawks. Washington's got to halt a 3-game skid. They're 3-5. They got to get a win at home on Sunday Night Football. Logan, by the way, they're going to be wearing their alternate jerseys. I'm so excited about this. These are the 91 Super Bowl era throwbacks. So for the first time since the rebrand, for those of us like me that grew up diehard Redskins fans, they're going to wear uniforms that look like what you wore. They're going to look like the thing that we all love and care about. I'm so excited about this. Huge win for ownership, huge win for the organization. It sounds kind of cheesy. I cannot wait to see just them under the lights on Sunday night. It's a really, really cool thing for the fan base.
Yeah, I think it is cool. And I think, there's been a big effort to kind of make sure that the fans of the Redskins are also fans of the Commanders, right? And I think there was a period of time where everyone felt bad for being a fan of the Redskins, and it kind of muddied up the fan base a little bit. And I think, this is a nice move by them to kind of say, hey, this is it's a rebranded team, but this is still your same team that you were a fan of growing up. And we're trying to make sure that everyone feels that nostalgia when they put the uniform on, when they come to the grass. And it was cool. We did something on the Command Center talking about the alternate jerseys, and hear Fred talk about wearing the jersey and what it was like and how it feels to be bringing them back, and seeing Art Monk wear the jersey on the Super Bowl. It's cool. You know what I mean? And again, it's, jerseys change for every team, but I love that there's this little callback to an era that is a huge part of this team's history. So I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's so well received by fans, and I know there's hope that they one day just kind of rock the old look. Doesn't have to be the logo, doesn't have to be anything to do with Redskins, but the old colors and the old jersey is very much able to be worn, and it's just going to make people feel, I think, warm and fuzzy as they watch on Sunday. Hopefully the performance allows them to continue to enjoy watching that gear, because it'll only go so long, I guess, until kickoff before everybody's screaming again. A couple of guys I wanted to hit on real fast before we get to the defense. Ben Sinnott caught a pass. National Ben Sinnott Day, baby. Let's do this thing. I loved this. Not only did he catch a pass, he had a little juice. My guy in the open field. You, not to knock Zach Ertz, who's invaluable in so many ways, not to knock John Bates, who's one of the best blockers in the league, but at the tight end position in the open field, they had a little speed, a little gallop going. What'd you think of that?
Yeah, so I think obviously he's kind of in pass protection. He gets a little check down type deal, but I think that's what he's good at. Everyone talks about why isn't Ben Sinnott catching the routes that Zach's catching? And they're different players. And I think you see the emphasis I think you see the difference in skill set. So Zach is this very, it's for someone who's never run routes or is a route running nerd like me or just loves ball. Zach does so many detailed, really precise things to help him create separation and get open, right? Ben is a young football player who's very early in his career. I mean, they couldn't be at more opposite ends in terms of experience, right? Life experience in the NFL. And Ben just doesn't have that same nuance. So the routes that Zach is currently running at F, really, I'm not going on a limb here saying that Zach is the only one in the offense who can run them the way Zach runs them, right? Ben is a little bit different player. He actually we were talking about Debo the other day, right? He actually reminds me a little bit more of Debo. He's not a great technical, like you don't put on Deebo Samuel's tape and be like, look at this great technical route separation. It's like he's going to get open on an under. He's going to get open runner away from somebody. He's going to catch the football. And then you're going to see that great yards after catch contact balance stuff that makes Deebo Samuel so special. I think Ben Sinnott is a similar mold. Like you go back to his stuff at Kansas State, and it's these big, like kind of long play action corners, these big seams, these big kind of vertical seams up the middle of the field. It's not like these technical, jerk routes or choice routes. It's these longer developing routes or stuff like off play action where he's catching a shallow. Like I know when he was drafted, Adam Peters made the connection between him and Kittle. And I think him and Kittle, there's a similar, like Kittle's a little bit more short area twitchy, but in terms of the type of ball they were catching in college, it's very similar. You catch the football and then you'd see that, 4.59 speed and the 40-inch vertical and all that explosive power come to the forefront. And so I think like if you wanted to, like get Ben Sinnott targets on screens, targets on crossers, targets that allow him to get into space and then work after. And I think you saw a little bit of that there. So that's where I'd kind of say like, it's always been there. The athlete's always been there. It's just the best way to get to that because it's hard in the context of the way they're having the F tight end run routes in this offense.
Yeah, and I get it. Like there's fans at home going, it's 25 career games and 7 catches. How is this a thing? But he hasn't really gotten opportunities. I'd love to see them just give him a chance, and design him a screen. It takes 1 out of your 60 plays, right? To say, hey, we're going to put the personnel in there. We're going to throw a tight end screen. Maybe it goes for 3 and it gets stopped, but maybe he rumbles for 17 and you get him involved in the offense a little bit. What about
like
Brandon?
Even like the ball that Bates caught, right? Like that kind of deep, high cross there. Like that's a great one for him also, right? Where he's in there to block the run. He runs over the top. And if a player like Ben in that kind of space, I'd really think you'd get to see his skill set come to the forefront.
Yeah, I'm just a little surprised that Cliff has not made it a priority at any point in a year and a half as a second-round pick. That said, he's at practice every day. He's got a better feel on things than I do, but God, would I love to see a little bit more of that based on what we just saw from Ben Sinnott. What about Brandon Coleman? Speaking of opportunities for young guys who were drafted high, third-round pick, left tackle to right tackle to left guard to inactive, and then he played a tackle. How did he look in the film review?
Yeah, I think he did some really good stuff. I think his footwork and his pass protection punch were a little bit better. I think the thing with him and Connerly both is there is a physical maturation that still needs to happen with them. And what I mean by that is when you look at like stud offensive linemen, like they're just made of granite. Like they're just built in this like calloused way. And they're just not quite there yet. So you see a lot of the movement, the flashes, the timing is starting to come along, even with Connerly, right, who had like some up and down moments in this game. The movement skills there, but the really good players, the guys that have played for 10 years, there's like this, they've got this body armor on and this power to their play that those two young pups don't have yet. And there is a lot of analytic stuff to support this that like offensive line take 3 to 4 years to really hit their stride in terms of a development arc. And a lot of it to me is there's a technical development that's required, but a lot of it's just physical strength. And I think with both those guys, they still need to develop that. But I do think like, Coleman's a good football player. He's going to be a part of this team moving forward. And I think he should be. And I think a lot of fans, like, because he's been inactive, maybe forgot about him, but he can play ball. It's just about like, can he stay healthy? I think that's the main question. And can he physically develop? And I think ultimately, yes, the second one, the first one's a little bit harder to know because of his injury history, but he's a good ball player, and I think you want him around. I think about, to me, he reminds me so much of Cosmi, not in terms of play style, but in terms of arc, right? It's like it took Cosmi a couple years to kind of find his feet and get settled. Then he became a borderline Pro Bowl player before the injury. I feel like Coleman has that same athletic potential, but he's got to be on the grass. He's got to get healthy, and he's got to be in the weight room. And if those three things happen, I think there's a good shot that he gets there.
I feel like he helped himself on a binary. By getting
for sure. I mean, if we're going straight binary, absolutely, yeah.
Like, because he had fallen out of favor, however we got here. Like, you go from the starter to now watching Chris Paul and inactive for weeks on end, and now they put you up. So there was obviously some progress being made, right? He's active. He's getting the pregame reps at left tackle behind Tunsil, and lo and behold, Tunsil goes down, and they need you. And so either you go out there and you quit yourself well and like help your standing with the group, or don't. And I feel like the first one happened based on what I saw. Like, I think he helped himself.
Yeah, I'm Hopefully it didn't sound like I was being critical.
No, I'm not. Yeah. I'm adding to what you're saying, I guess, more than anything. All right, last guy I wanted to just hit on is that Terry McLaurin's out again on offense. This quad has popped back up. So this, tough season for him after the summer holdout continues now. But they move forward with Deebo Samuel and then the collection of the younger and secondary wide receivers. We saw Terry touchdown catch, sideline catch, doing things no one else can do. I mean, it goes without saying when you don't have him, you're worse off. But what's the plan now? I mean, are they, because they've spent so much time without him, is it help you a little more in a short week at this point?
Yeah, I mean, this week it would be nice to have a player like him, a guy that can really, again, vertically stretch and kind of rip those coverage contours apart, because I think Jaden's going to be able to find ways to buy time and get the football down the field, and not having him is going to be challenging. And I think, a little bit of it is like trying to, write your high school acceptance letter with your left hand a little bit. You know what I'm saying? It's just it just makes it so much more challenging not having that skill set out there. And I do think Cliff has shown at times this year, and the offensive staff has shown at times this year, that they can do it. It just, I go back to this analogy. It just takes the target and makes it very, very small in terms of what you have to hit. You're going to be in more third downs. You're going to get less offensive chunks. You're going to have to go on longer drives. All of those things they've shown they can do. It's hard to do that in the league. Statistically, you're less likely to score points that way. So to me, yes, it goes back to all the stuff we just talked about. It increases the necessity that you run the football efficiently, right? Play action pass becomes more important. Can we find some easy buttons in the offense for guys to separate, some motion, some bunches, something, so that guys don't have to win relying totally on, NFL route running nuance to get open, guys that are kind of at the back end here. So yeah, it's going to be tough. There are ways to do it. And I think Cliff has shown a know-how and an understanding of how to do that. But it just makes it more difficult, unfortunately.
All right, let's get to the Commanders' defense against the Seahawks offense in this game. We talked a lot about how good Seattle's defense is. I don't think their offense is as dynamic, but it's ranked just as high. They're number 3 in the NFL, 6 yards per play, and their passing game is pretty exotic and prolific. A guy that you're familiar with, Clint Kubiak, 8.73 yards per play, far and away best in the NFL. Sam Darnold's playing really well. He extends plays. He's kind of slippery in the pocket. He's uber athletic at quarterback, and he's been super accurate down the field as well. What's interesting is they can't run the ball well at all. They're 31st out of 32 teams, 3.6 yards per carry, and this has been all year long. They got 2 very talented backs, and Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet that they drafted pretty high, but they can't really get their run game going. They do just enough of it to have success. But what do you make of this matchup, the Seahawks offense against the Commanders defense?
I mean, this is a classic, Kyle, Mike, Shanahan offense. They are going to run the football. They are going to run the football to set up play action shots. That's exactly what they want to be. I was watching, I think it was the Houston game. I can't remember. I watched 3 or 4 games for them, and it's just, the rhythm of the play call is so kind of Kyle Shanahan from 2015, or whatever it was, or 2017 when he was in Atlanta. They tried a play action shot on first down. They ran the ball on second down. They ran the ball on third down. They ran a play action shot on 4th and 1 for a big explosive chunk. That's just how they operate. Everything they do is designed to get you close to the line of scrimmage, get you in tight formations, and then we're going to hit explosive plays down the field. And that's really what it feels like. And then we're going to try and leverage Sam Darnold as little as possible. And over the course of the game, he's going to make 5 to 7 just insane plays from the pocket, like you're describing, just delivering laser beam rips.
I've been blown away watching him. He has made some of the most ridiculous throws I've seen all year.
There's a reason he's a first-round quarterback, right? He is crazy talented, right? So, there was a touchdown against Tampa Bay, right, where he's throwing a little, it's double post, and there's zone players falling in the window, and he doesn't even look the safety off. He just rips a 1,000-mile-an-hour fastball through a window that's about the size of my laptop screen, and it's a touchdown. And you're just I don't know how you stop that. He gave you the answers to the test, and he just physically was better than you with that throw. There's a play against was it against Tampa Bay also, where it's a play action shot. They run crisscross goes, and he's one-on-one with the safety. The safety does a pretty good job. He's in good position, and he just rips it down the field, and Jackson Smith and Jigma makes him right. So everyone talks about their offensive efficiency. Their offensive efficiency is the explosive plays, right? And it's different than the ones that we saw versus Patrick Mahomes. These are all designed. There's a leak play to Cooper Kupp the week prior against Houston or 2 weeks ago against Houston. And so it's like, that's what they do. They're going to run the football. They're not going to do a lot of like really hard technical stuff at the line of scrimmage for Sam Darnold. We're going to get to formations and shifts to get you easy reads at the start. And he's just going to let that thing absolutely fly off his hand.
They also, you started your analysis of the offense saying they're going to run the ball. More than any team I've seen this year, they don't really care if it's effective in the moment, it seems like.
Nope.
They might have 10 carries for 16 yards through 19 plays or whatever, almost every single week. Like, it does not matter. They're counting on number one, eventually hitting a couple of explosives as you wear down. But it's not even about the run game, essentially. I mean, it's about all the other stuff off of it. But yeah, they will continue to bang you stop the run, that's great. You have to, but they're going to keep banging their head against the wall. Like, most guys will go away from it. Kubiak is straight out of the Shanahan mold. It's just not happening.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good example of like when you have a balanced defensive-led football team, the pressure it takes off your offense. Like, they're okay punting the football. They're totally okay with it. They can operate in a really comfortable game flow, right? We can run. Oh, we didn't get it, punt. Oh, but the next time they come out, that second run of that sequence is going to be a play action shot for 60. And like, that's how they operate. And so they are very comfortable. They're very confident. They're very conservative, but the defense is what lets them do that. Right. And they play in these really comfortable game flows, the point spread that no one's scoring a ton of points on them. They don't have to score a ton of points. They can, obviously, but I think it just really speaks to like, this is what complimentary football looks like to me. Right. And Sam Darnold's been protecting the football at a high level. Again, I think 2 weeks ago when they played Houston, he had 2 interceptions, but he only got like 4 on the season. So
he's got 2 games where he's had 2, the Pittsburgh game and then that game. Otherwise, he hadn't turned it over.
Right. And again, like, that's who they want to be. And so I say you got to stop the run, and then we got to be ready for play action shots. And it's tough because, like, people say, oh, well, how would you stop them? How would you stop the pass concepts? Like, shoot, man, like Jackson Smith and Jigba is playing as good of a wide receiver as I've seen in a long time. Like, I don't know who on this team would match up and cover him. So I think you're probably going to want to lead to more zone coverages. And again, like, probably too high stuff. But again, if you're going to be in too high, it's going to be harder to stop the run. They love to run those like old pull concepts where the guy runs up 5 yards, tight end runs up 5 yards, sits down, and then breaks out, and then the dig comes in behind. They love that stuff. Jackson Smith and Jigba is excellent at it. Again, he's found explosive shots down the field. Like, everyone wants to talk about Sam Darnold, and Sam Darnold is dealing, but he's got a really special player in Jackson Smith and Jigba who is carrying this offense.
Yeah, leads the NFL in target share. 38% of their throws go to him. Air yard share, 49% of the air yards for this offense go to him. Receiving yard share, 46% of their receiving yards this year have been JSN. So he is a one-man wrecking crew in so many ways for them, accounting for 59% of their yards on downfield passes this year. He's a problem, and he's going to be a problem. How do you defend Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's averaged 4 yards more average route depth and 6 more air yards per target this season than his rookie campaign? He's exploding in front of our eyes.
So if I was game planning for this, and again, I'm not a defensive coordinator, but like the things you got to take away, you got to think about stopping the run and stopping the play action shots, right? So what's the best way to do that? It's probably get in some form of cover 3 if you want to stop the run. If you're in cover 3, though, you really put that middle field safety in a bind. So you don't want to do that all the time. So how do we get out of that stuff? How do we add, what's our next best coverage? Well, it's probably some type of 2-man, which they ran with great success against Kansas City, which maybe you feel like you could run more because you're not going to get the running ability of Patrick Mahomes. Okay. The problem with that is in the too high safety look, they're going to run the football. You're going to have a hard time stopping the run. So you are kind of walking this balance in terms of play call, because again, in 2-man, like you have whoever's on Jackson Smith and Jigba with help over the top, which is great, but you can't really stop the run. And so you're going to kind of have to walk this line of saying we're in man coverage in single high, Can the rush get home? Can we cover up long enough on the perimeter? And I don't know if I have a good answer for that, quite honestly. I really don't, because that's how effective Sam Darnold and Jackson Smith and Jigba are playing. I think maybe one of the solutions here is you say, like, we're not going to completely stop him, but can we just slow him down enough? Can we muddy the waters enough for Sam Darnold, where we're kind of running some of our inverted Tampa 2 that's been so effective this year at stopping, kind of offsetting Justin Herbert when they played the Chargers, for example, just causing a little bit of question, a little bit of doubt. Maybe that's the solution, but I do think it's got to be a layered game plan. It can't just be like, oh, we got to run cover 3. Oh, we got to run 2-man. It's got to be down and distance specific. It's got to be like formation specific. There's going to be a lot of things that go into this that, again, I don't envy Joe Wood Jr. this week in terms of trying to stop this duo.
Here's my concern, in addition to Smith and Jigba, would be the run game and Kenneth Walker, actually. So Zach Charbonnet is their thumper. He's got 5 of their 6 goal line carries, 4 touchdowns, I think. He's got 7 of 10 short yardage carries when they need a yard or 2 on 3rd and 4th down. But they use Walker more as like their speed kind of in the combo. And he runs outside the tackle 61% of the time. To me, it seems like Washington has struggled with that. I'd be curious to see if that bears out on the film. It was definitely a problem last year. I know from talking to people in the building, they tried to fix that by setting edges better, by going and getting size at defensive end. Well, now you're down Wise, you're down Dorrance Armstrong, you're down Javonte Jean-Baptiste. And so you're seeing these teams kind of stretch them out, crease them, and that's Shanahan's running game. I mean, and it's what, frankly, Walker's doing it. 61% of his runs are outside the tackles.
And I will say, at least over the last couple of weeks, they've been more of a, I don't know if you can check this percentage, but at least to my eye, they've been a little bit more of a duo team, single back power, downhill in between the tackles. And I think that actually fits with what Washington does relatively well. Bobby Wagner's on the interior, Frankie Louvu, Kinlaw, Payne. So to your point, like if I'm Seattle, I'm looking at the film, I'm saying, wow, the Bears had a lot of success with this pin pull stuff. Let's try some of that stuff. You look at even what the Chiefs did in terms of like this RPO perimeter horizontal stretch, like maybe that's where we got to like butter our bread a little bit more. I know there was a couple holding calls against the Cowboys, but the pin pull plays prior to the holds went off for a couple explosive plays. So if I'm them and they have this tool in the bag, right, I'm like, let's see if they've fixed it. And if they haven't fixed it, we're just going to run it until they fix it in the game. And again, like to your point, like there's personnel issues there. There's some fit issues that have come up over the course of the last couple of weeks with fitting those runs. And I think they've gotten better at it. But again, teams are going to see what you struggle with and say like, hey, fix this, test it. And like you said, Kenneth Walker is kind of the Grant Paulsen back, in my opinion. He's explosive. He's physical. He's got great contact balance, but he can hit the home run. Unlike Zach Charbonnet, who I think is maybe a better like technical runner, Zach Charbonnet. But again, you don't have that explosive playmaking ability. And the other thing that's important to note here is they have a monster of a fullback that is absolutely decapitating people when healthy. He's just coming off IR this week. It'll be interesting to see if he plays.
All right, let's make a FanDuel prediction next, and we will get Logan's thoughts on who's going to eat before we get out of here. It's Take Command, Logan Paulsen, Grant Paulsen with you, leading into a Sunday night football tilt with Seattle. Welcome back, Take Command. Our final few moments here. The pick segment is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. I'm actually looking at Jaden Daniels back in the lineup for Washington, throwing for over 225 yards at minus 130 in this game. I think Washington's going to have a hard time running the football. I think they're going to have to throw the football in this game. I think they could be trailing for a good portion of this game and trying to come back and play close in the fourth quarter. So I could see Jaden Daniels throwing for somewhere between 225, 250. I like that value there. I could see them hitting a couple of bigger plays in the passing game here if they can, dial some things up against the right coverages, Logan.
No, I think you're right. I think when you look back to how they played Baltimore last year, I think there were some explosive chunks they were able to find, especially in the first 3 quarters of that game. So, yeah, I think that's something that's very on the table, especially, if Cliff can find some ways to make sure that the pass protection holds up and we get the football down the field. So, absolutely.
That was your pick segment brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. All right, Logan, who's going to eat? Let's pick a player on offense. Someone's going to have a big day. Who do you got?
Man, this is tough. I'm going to say Jaden Daniels. I want so badly. I'm such a Jaden Daniels fan. I love watching him play. And I just think I can't wait to see him do what we've seen him do countless times since he's gotten here, because we're going to need him to play at his best. Accuracy needs to be on point. Decision-making needs to be on point. That extra little magical playmaking ability needs to be on point. And so maybe, I don't know for sure he's going to eat, but what I'm saying is that, like, if the Commanders are going to win this game, he has to eat. And so that's why I'm going to say Jaden Daniels.
I think we get a little bounce back from Jalen Lane. I think he gets a couple opportunities. I'd like to see him on Reek Woolen. I think that'd be a nice little matchup as a guy he might be able to route up a little bit. I'm going to say he goes for over 50 receiving yards and has one of his better games of the season. Yeah. Defensively, give me your commander who you think balls out.
Yeah, I mean, so statistically, I think, or based on like the strengths and weaknesses of the team, at least based on film, like our interior guys should absolutely kill, right? Like Daron Payne should kill. There's a rookie right guard, Gray Zabel. Anthony Bradford, their left guard, has struggled throughout this year. I mean, I think he's a good player, but has struggled a little bit with his consistency. So I think about Kinlaw and Payne on the interior, Johnny Newton on the interior, and I say to myself, like, gosh, those guys should be able to take advantage of this matchup, and I think they're going to have to, right? Also, the other person that I just want to highlight here would be Trey Amos and Marshawn Lattimore and the Jackson Smith and Jigba matchup. I think those guys, Marshawn specifically outside of the Dallas game, when you look at his statistics, has played well. Gets a turnover last week, and Trey Amos has played pretty consistently since the start of the year. So maybe they can figure something out with that duo to kind of slow down the best receiver in football at the moment.
Daron Payne has faced a double team only a third of the time this year. It's his second lowest rate of his career, which I think is a Javon Kinlaw statistic as much as anything else. But good sign, maybe, moving forward for him. He's had some huge games. I thought he was incredible against Dallas. Wasn't fully healthy all week leading up to the Kansas City game, but hopefully he's feeling a little bit better. All right, Logan, I will see you in the press box on Sunday night. If you'd like, I could make you a plate. It looks just like my plate. You could eat a delicious meal right before the game.
Yeah, I mean, let's confirm, or let's talk before then, and then we'll maybe meet up, and I'll bring my own plate and you bring your own plate, and then we'll compare notes when we get there.
Okay, let's see who has a healthier plate. That could be a silly game. The odds on FanDuel are like minus 950 for Logan to have the healthier plate. Take command, 106.7 The Fan, Team 980 YouTubes, wherever you get your audio. Spread the word on the pod, please. We're trying to grow it throughout this football season. Thank you for checking us out. Sunday Night Football, enjoy the alt jerseys, the throwbacks to the 91 era. And let's see if the Commanders can end this skid. Thanks for watching. Take command.